So earlier in this episode, or well, for the bulk of this episode, I was talking about endurance, right? And the idea of enduring hardships, enduring trials, enduring pain, enduring the fatigue, and all that fun stuff. And I started off by saying that 2024 has been kind of a rough year, right? And I mean, it has been. It has been. And, in America right now, we are in another election cycle. And especially as of late, those things don't turn out to be the most fun. Let's put it that way. And this one is no different. Maybe it's not as bad as it was 4 years ago, or maybe it's not as bad as then. But you still see a lot of different groups going against each other, combating each other. And then you see things like what is going on in the UK. Look, I don't know. No, first of all, don't live there, so I don't know what's going on over there. But just a couple people that I talked to, a couple other people who live over there, things don't sound so great over there right now. We have this thing going on with Israel and Gaza and Russia. Ukraine is still a thing too. And then there's some things going on with things like countries in Africa too. So like there's stuff going on everywhere you go, everywhere you look. There's something happening. There's something blowing up, or there's something falling apart. And I wanted to kind of take this time, and I don't want to take too much of your time, but I want to take this time to basically say, hey, still, in the face of all this stuff, remain optimistic, okay? And if there's ever really, and I know how it sounds, because like I also kind of partially say this to Christians as well, like specifically, if there was ever a case for Christianity, here it is, right? Because with Christianity, with real Christianity, you have hope, and you can look at these things and not fall apart. You can experience these things and not completely just lose yourself, right? And I think about this often, and I kind of went back to my man Vodi Bakum. Now I know he's a little controversial at times, but I've listened to a lot of his sermons, and we'll just leave it at that, right? But there's this one thing that he recently preached about. And it was that very thing, optimism. You got to be optimistic, right? And he explained a situation in which the children of Israel were split. Well, they were split. So there were people in Judah who were basically sent into exile. And they were basically ruled over by Babylon. And, they were sent into exile into Babylon, and they were just like, all right, well, we're only supposed to be here. There are some people, rather felonious people, kind of saying that, hey, we're only going to be here for like 2 years, right? And then come to find out they were there for like 60 something years, close to 70 years. So a little off, but they believed that they weren't going to be in exile that long. And a message came from God to Jeremiah at that point in time, and was basically like, nah, y'all gonna be here for a while, essentially. Because it was kind of implied, because he was like, God basically said through Jeremiah, like, nah, and I think this was a letter too, but God was basically like, nah, listen, y'all gonna have to build some roots here. Y'all gonna have to take wives, have kids. y'all gonna be here for a while, basically, right? And on top of that, they were pretty much directed to pray for the goodness, I guess, of Babylon, right? They were supposed to pray for their captors, essentially, because the better they were doing, the better the Babylon was doing, basically, the better that the ones who were taken and put into exile are going to do. And I was just like, so that's basically the way that God sustained them during exile. And it's just interesting because there are some, modern day parallels to that. My man Vody was preaching about it, and it brought a lot of things to light for me, right? It made me look at things with a slightly different perspective, because right now it is very easy to look at everything that's going on and just have this completely negative view of the world and completely negative view of life as we know it. Like, the most common phrase is, well, with all these storms and with all this political turmoil and with all this stuff going on overseas, and did you see what happened at the Olympics, that opening ceremony, and that in the closing ceremony, what are we doing? It was like, and then all of a sudden the Church of England is not the Church of England anymore. There's a whole bunch of different things that people point out. Rarely do we hear about any of the positive stuff that's going on. That is definitely going on. And so you got to be mindful of these things, right? So it's just like, be mindful of the stuff that you listen to, consume, absorb on a consistent basis, right? Because in some way, shape, or form, that will detract from your hope. That will detract from the positive stuff. Now, I'm not saying be unrealistically positive, right? I understand a lot of these situations. Some of them I don't have any clue about, but I understand the difference between right and wrong, right? I can spot the morally corrupt versus the morally strong standing, or the morally astute. I don't know how you want to put that, but I can tell the difference, right? And I can see there are a lot of weird things happening right now. I get it, but I still have hope. And again, that's the case for Christianity, right? Like, if you don't have that hope, if you're not offered that hope, then what's the point in any of this stuff, right? So this message is partially to Christians, partially to my non-Christian people too, right? But it's just like, the Christians is like, you should be the stalwart of hope. Right? Because you should be the one who basically is just like, look, this person is consistently optimistic. Everybody that you're connected to, and hopefully you're connected to people who are not just Christians, right? Like, everybody should be looking to you for that optimism. You should be the light, right? You shouldn't get to the point where you're you turn it into woe was me and woe was us, and this is the end of the world. Because for all we know, we're just getting put into exile. But ultimately we'll be sustained. But that's only if you have that hope, right? Yeah, so I don't want to take too much time, because I know I took a long time with these other two topics beforehand. So I just wanted to drop off, just remain optimistic. Continue to have hope. Continue to cultivate that hope. Continue to be that person that everybody knows is just like, no matter what, they look at the bright side of these things, right? And don't do it in a way that's completely unrealistic, but do it in a way that's actually true. Like, hey, you know what? Things aren't over yet. And understand that certain things that are probably happening because certain people that need to turn to God. Maybe not. But at the end of the day, you should still have that hope, and that should lead to your optimism. All right. So if you like this segment, here's another one for you. Click over here. And if you want the entire podcast, go this way. Click on that one right there. And once again, I appreciate you. All right, you take it easy.